civilization seems to be at least as undestroyed as it was before. That's,
Damn it.
I don't know, disappointing, sort of.
Yeah, I wish I had more power.
Yeah, but then you have to be responsible for how you use the power.
Why? No one else
Other
is?
people will think you are anyway.
Exactly.
You have to be responsible to your cats. How did your actions affect their ability to be appropriately cuddled and fed?
That's a good point. If I don't have civilization, I can't just buy their favorite food at the grocery store.
Right.
And that would be tragic. All right. Welcome to the Telltale Cake, where we tell tales and eat cake, and we try to ignore the corpses under the floorboards. I'm your host, Beth. With me today is my dear friend, Dea, cat mom, dancer, former bunny mom. Dea, this is the second book we've read about bunnies. Are we experts now?
I think we must be bunny experts.
Clearly.
I haven't had a bunny in years, but I still think I can qualify as a bunny expert because I said so.
I've never had a bunny, but I've now read 2 books about bunnies.
Obviously, we're experts.
Very clearly. So, today, instead of reading the incredibly depressing Watership Down, we are reading Bunnicula, a rabbit tale of mystery. What awaits us beneath these pages?
In my case, it's the pages of what looks just like a child's library book because it's a child's library book. My husband was kind enough to get it from his media center for me, so.
This is also a library book from the children's section of the library.
But mine has the nearly indestructible cover that will withstand the predations of 5 bazillion small children, so.
Yeah, that's much more appropriate for children than mine. So this book was written by Deborah and James Howe in...
Supposedly. No, it wasn't.
Who was it written by?
Well, it's right there in the book.
Yes. It's by Harold, right?
Harold wrote this book. He's hidden his last name, but Harold wrote the book. They just recorded it for him.
This is true. So this was written by Harold, and Harold is a dog.
Yes.
He did an excellent job. He also got the services of Alan Daniel to make illustrations. So this book has pictures, which I deeply appreciate.
Does yours have the same pictures as mine? That is awesome. I think so.
Possibly. So does that look like...
Yes, those are the same illustrations in mine. I love it. Those are the proper illustrations.
Wonderful. So Harold wrote this in 1979. So it's actually not that long after Watership Down was written.
7-ish years, I think.
But it feels so much more modern.
Yes, it does, because it's so much more respectful of all the animals, I think.
It really is.
Pro-animal.
Now, of course, on this show, we like to eat cake with our books. So today I made a carrot cake, and because you are my beloved distinguished guest, it is a gluten-free carrot cake.
Yay! I get cake. I don't often get cake.
So, if I can move the accoutrement. This is a recipe that I got from the King Arthur flour baking site and then ended up adjusting a little bit. So it called for walnuts, and I put in pecans instead because I much prefer pecans to walnuts. It's just...
We're Southern.
Yeah, what can I say? It's Georgia. We have a right to substitute pecans for everything. It's got a cream cheese frosting with cinnamon and vanilla in it.
Ooh, now that's an interesting take on it.
And
cinnamon cream cheese frosting sounds fabulous.
And the cake itself has ginger and cinnamon and cloves, and I think I put a little bit of cardamom in it just for
In other
fun.
words, all the good stuff.
Right. And it's in bundt cake form, which seems odd for a carrot cake, so we'll have to see how this works. This is actually my 4th attempt at this stupid cake, so it had better be good.
You mean it's your first attempt and it just turned out fabulous?
Yes, it is definitely that. So
I'm supportive.
You are. So I don't really eat carrot cake that much, so I don't really know how to make it. So the first time I tried to make it, I was going to save myself some labor and just use some of the pre-shredded carrots and call it a day with that. Turns out that doesn't work. You have to actually grate or food process the carrots. Otherwise, you just have strips of carrot in your batter. It's not
Oh,
good.
because it has to be finer?
Yes.
That makes sense.
The second time, I was trying it with almond flour rather than 1-to-1 gluten-free flour. And I felt like the almonds just took over the flavor and made it really heavy. So
It's pretty.
this is my the third attempt. It was okay, but I felt like the batter didn't have enough fat in it, like it was kind of dry, which is a problem I get a lot with gluten-free baking. And
And
also,
it absorbs differently. It absorbs moisture differently.
and also I felt like it didn't have enough flavor. So this is attempt number 4 with more oil and more spices.
Excellent.
It had better work. Or I will just, I don't know, cry.
Throw it across the room, something like that. I think it's very good. It is very good. I'm happy.
That's pretty decent cake.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I like about making a carrot cake
I'm
gluten-free,
failing at eating cake.
I'm sure you'll master it. Most gluten-free cakes end up with kind of a gritty texture, but I feel like adding carrots into the batter makes it have a weird texture anyway. So it kind of disguises that.
Yeah, my next baking attempt with gluten-free flour is going to be to try and make a hummingbird cake, which, again, very Southern.
Mm-hmm.
This is really good.
Thank you. I really like the frosting.
Yeah, it is really good. Cinnamon cream cheese frosting is really good.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. So yes, attempt number 4. Sometimes the 4th time is the charm.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the 57th time is the charm. And the nice thing about failing at making cake is that the worst thing that happens is you just throw out the cake and never speak of it again to anyone.
Except you just recorded it.
I can cut all this out. I have the power of editing. All right, so while we're eating our cake, let's judge this by its cover. We do have different covers here. Mine is by C.F. Payne, and it shows a frightening rabbit with... Oh, the camera's over here. It shows a frightening rabbit that looks like a vampire, which is quite nice, and just tells us sort of what we're going to expect. So I wouldn't say it's anything unexpected or groundbreaking, but it's a pretty solid cover.
Mine says, designed by Mary M. Ahern, so I'll assume that's who did the cover illustration. And here's mine. I mean, if you want a cover that says, this is a late 1970s children's book,
You got it.
we got it. This is very much the type of cover I saw on all the books when I was a kid, so I think it hits that goal. If we're going for modern aesthetics, not so much.
You know, I'm not mad at them. They're fine.
And they are very cute, you know.
Yeah, there's
It has
it's got a
right
little
there.
bunny.
There they are together, cuddled up together with, I think is adorable. So
Always cuddle your vampire bunnies.
always cuddle all fuzzy creatures. Just in principle, just cuddle them. If they're fuzzy creatures, cuddle them.
Let's get into it. We're going to start in our nice, wholesome, middle-class family. We've got a mother who's a lawyer and a father who's a college professor, and their 2.3 children who fight a lot and are just sort of your standard young boys, Toby and Pete.
They are boys, very much boys.
And they have 2 pets. We've got Harold, our narrator and our author, who's a very fuzzy dog, got some Russian wolfhound in him.
Yes.
And then we have Chester. Chester is a cat, a very literate cat.
I was going to say the same thing. He is extremely literate. I'm very proud of him.
He reads a lot. He stays up late reading Edgar Allan Poe, which
I relate.
and also because the father is a college professor, he ends up trying out all his lectures on Chester, and if Chester does not fall asleep, the lecture can be considered a success.
Well, you got to keep all the college kids awake, so it's a good strategy.
When I have to do presentations for work, I also practice on my cats.
Are they as helpful?
Sometimes they get bored and just leave. And then I
There's that.
figure I need more work. I need to be more entertaining. So, we have one night. It's a dark and stormy night.
As it must be.
Obviously.
It's vampires.
The family, except for the cat and dog, have gone out to the movies, to Dracula. Now, I'm not sure which version of Dracula they're going to. There is a version that came out in 1979 starring Sir Laurence Olivier, and I assume it was that. But Dracula is frequently adapted. Could be the one with Bela Lugosi, for all we know.
Well, yeah, it is also, you have to remember, it is the 70s, and unlike today, it was not uncommon to do a lot of returns to theaters because you just didn't have as many. You couldn't just load Netflix on your computer and have that happen because you didn't have that type of computer, much less Netflix. So I did go to a lot of reruns of old movies in the late 70s. So
some version of Dracula. When the family finally returns, they're carrying a mysterious bundle. It's a bunny.
Though you can't tell that at first because all you see are little glistening eyes, which I think is adorable.
Glistening eyes. Turns out there's a mysterious note that was left on the bundle. The children fight over who gets to play with the bunny for a while, but eventually the bunny just gets put in a cage and everybody goes to bed. Harold uses his knowledge of Slavic languages, because he's a Russian wolfhound, to translate this note to say, "Someone please take care of my baby." And I would like to point out here that rehoming animals, occasionally necessary, usually under very severe circumstances. If you're going to do it, don't just leave your animal in a dark movie theater on a seat.
Also, don't leave your little tiny newborn animal on the front doorstep of a veterinary clinic.
Don't. Just don't.
I mean, even though I got a kitty that way, but still, don't do it.
There are good, responsible ways to rehome animals. I got a kitty because somebody was advertising through all her friends because her child was ending up in the hospital with severe cat allergies. There are responsible ways. Leaving your tiny, defenseless animals where someone is likely to sit on it, not a good way.
And did sit on it.
Yes. Fortunately, did not crush it. Also, I am extremely pedantic, and I have to point this out. The language that the note is written in is identified as Romanian. Romanian is not a Slavic language. Romanian is a Romance language, weirdly enough. So it is more related to Latin and French than it is to Russian. So despite the fact that it is plot convenient for Harold to be able to read it because Russian wolfhound, blah, 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 not accurate.
I like the some of the little details that they add, even to give you a hint from the very beginning that Bunnicula is not just a normal bunny, because when they find Bunnicula, you know, if you abandon your little bunny rabbit somewhere, you're probably going to put him in a nice little box with like soft fuzzy things, or maybe with some straw. Bunnicula's in a bed of dirt. So first clue,
Probably special Carpathian Mountains dirt.
or something.
The family argues about what to name Bunnicula for a while. Tries to name him Fluffy, which
Like
is
everybody else.
which is obviously a great name for a vampire. But settle on Bunnicula because he's a bunny that they found at Dracula. And then they all go to bed. Chester and Harold are not happy. Harold is not happy because the children are, for a while, more interested in playing with Bunnicula than with him, which is very sad.
Poor Harold. Harold, though, seems to be a very understanding and compassionate doggy. So good for him.
He's just going to wait for the children to get bored and come back to play with reliable old Harold. Chester is going to be a little bit more neurotic about the situation.
I get the feeling Chester's going to be a little more neurotic about every situation.
Which,
Ever.
yes, some people just don't respond to new situations as well as others and have to have more coping skills for it. And that's fine. That's just a thing. So Chester's going to be a little more neurotic, and Chester's also very well read. So he's suspicious of this bunny, and he also stays up late. So he notices that this bunny that just kind of lays around all day and does nothing is getting up and moving around at night. He's moving through his locked cage and getting into the refrigerator. And Chester is very, very suspicious.
Yes, and it's all because Chester got distracted by the pendulum on the grandfather clock, which, okay, if I were a cat, I'd probably be really distracted by the pendulum on the grandfather clock myself, and possibly get bonked in the head with it also.
Well, it's not just cats. It's everyone in the ballet Nutcracker.
But yeah, everybody gets distracted by grandfather clocks, so I guess. They are really cool. I've never had one, but I knew people who had them, and they were very cool. But I had a cuckoo clock.
Ooh, I would like a grandfather clock. I'm not sure where I'd put it, and I'm not sure why I want it. I just feel like it would go with my fainting couch well.
A grandfather clock would go fabulously with your fainting couch. Just make sure that you too have a grandfather clock with glass over the pendulum if you want the pendulum to survive more than like a week or so, because, cats.
True. All right, so Chester notices odd things and starts staying up all night to keep an eye on Bunnicula, which makes Harold sad because not only are the children not playing with him, Chester is sleeping all day now and can't really spend time with him.
Poor Chester.
Poor Harold.
Everybody's all messed up.
Then the mystery deepens. White vegetables appear.
White vegetables.
Terrifying white vegetables. I'm currently rereading Moby Dick, and there's many, many paragraphs about how white is a terrifying, mysterious color in nature. And Herman Melville is never wrong.
That must be true then.
Yes, so white, very suspicious. Now, with their rather fabulous ability to rationalize,
I love all their explanations.
the family decides it's some sort of blight on a vegetable, which has sort of drained the vegetables of juice and left them white.
Yes, because it's also very dry when she cuts it open and to see what's inside. I think it's hilarious that everybody wants to see what's going on. So Harold puts his paws up on the counter please don't notice me, please don't notice me, please don't notice me. Chester just leaps onto the counter and they're like, get off the counter. And so he leaps onto the child's head, which I think is a perfectly valid choice.
It's not the counter?
It is not the counter. And he can see the tomato.
Chester's very smart. Chester also puts two and two together and realizes that this bunny is a vampire that's draining the juices out of vegetables.
Well, he sees the marks.
He does.
The two little tiny marks.
He tries to tell Harold his conclusions. Harold is not particularly impressed and does not particularly care on the not unreasonable grounds that it's just kind of vegetables. But Chester... I think a vampire is causing me to sneeze as I start revealing the secrets of vampires. Chester says, today vegetables, tomorrow the world, which is, of course, an example of the slippery slope fallacy, which is not my favorite logical fallacy, but it's a good one.
I mean, he is a cat, a very, very, very well-read, very well-educated cat, but he is still a cat, so his logic will be tainted by the fact that he's a cat, and we'll look at it from a cat perspective.
And cats do not know that things will not spiral out of control.
Well, things that their siblings do usually spiral out of control, so it's a reasonable assumption.
Yes.
Plus, who are we to say that human logic is the right logic and that cat logic is the wrong logic?
Exactly.
It's very human-centric.
This is true. And, of course, this is written by a dog.
True. So then we get dog logic, which also is probably going to be, in most cases, unless it's written by a Chihuahua, probably going to be much more laid back.
Yeah, I think reading anything written by a Chihuahua would give me anxiety.
Probably. I think just being around a Chihuahua can be enough to give you anxiety.
Seriously. I cannot stand those things. Anyway, Chester. Since Harold won't help him, Chester will take matters into his own paws. And again, he's very well read. He's going to be kind of the Abraham Van Helsing of the situation. He knows what to do. It's things like he tries throwing water onto the bunny. He tries spreading garlic around.
Which gets him his own bath.
He also tries to drive a stake through the bunny's heart, which is a hilarious scene in which he gets a steak that was going to be eaten for dinner and starts trying to punch it into the bunny's heart.
He's like, Chester's like, we have to pound a sharp steak in. And Harold's like, I can taste it and tell you if it's sharp. And he's like, never mind, it's all we got. Go. It's a what was it, sirloin? It's a sirloin. It'll be good. I'm glad they didn't try the other form of sharp steak. So I much prefer the trying to pound a piece of meat into the bunny's chest, and that's a much better option.
The bunny is basically covered with the steak.
Yeah, he's like, I can't find his heart. It's like, it's because you can't see where the bunny is underneath all that.
Chester is pulled away and I believe taken to the vet to see if anything is wrong with him.
No, they all end up going to the vet later.
Oh,
That's
right.
when he gets thrown out into the yard for a little while.
Yes.
And he has to spend the night out in the yard.
He's very upset. Harold gets to eat the steak, though, since it's ruined.
Which was almost going to be thrown in the trash. And then Mr. Morgan is like, well, it's already ruined. Let's just let Harold have it. And Harold's like, yes, please. I'm a good boy.
Things get quiet for a while. Harold is still wishing that the boys would play with him more, because after all, one of his major jobs in the household is to eat cupcakes with Toby while Toby does his homework. Which, PSA, do not feed your dog chocolate cupcakes.
I had that on my notes, too. I have that bookmarked in here. It's like, don't give chocolate to your dog.
No matter.
Bad idea. No matter how much the dog may tell you he wants it or she wants it, don't give your dog chocolate.
Just don't do it.
It looks like anything that we do is going to be sprinkled with animal PSAs.
Probably.
Yes.
We are experts because this is the second book we've read.
And we've owned a very large number of fuzzy creatures.
True. In fact, don't feed any of your fuzzy creatures chocolate. It's just not good for them.
It's not.
Don't do it. So things are quieting down, and then Harold realizes that Bunnicula is becoming increasingly listless, even for him. And it's because Chester has been starving Bunnicula.
Poor baby.
Yes, he's been preventing Bunnicula from getting any food. He's been taking away all the vegetables. And Bunnicula can't really eat just pellet rabbit food. He has to drink the fresh juice of vegetables. So Harold decides to come up with a plan to help Bunnicula because, Bunnicula is really kind of cute. And, maybe he's a vampire, but Harold's not really on board with the whole killing evil vampire bunnies train.
Because he thinks he's not an evil vampire bunny, just a vampire bunny.
How evil can a bunny really be?
Ever since I read this, I've had I've got a theory / bunnies. It must be bunnies stuck in my head. So if we go with Anya's theory, bunnies can be very, 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 very bad.
What can't we face except for bunnies?
Bunnies! Bunnies, it must be bunnies!
And also, Monty Python has proven that some of them have nasty, sharp, pointy teeth and are murderous.
That rabbit's dynamite.
It is. It's pretty fabulous also.
But Harold doesn't think that this bunny is any of those things. So he's going to help out Bunnicula. So Harold figures out how to open Bunnicula's crate. And we have some funny scenes while he tries to get his head into the crate, because Harold has a very large head. But he does manage to pick up Bunnicula and start taking him out. And he has to time this very carefully to be around sunset. And he takes Bunnicula to a giant salad that Mrs. Monroe is making.
With a white salad dressing. Because if you've got a white salad dressing, then nobody's going to notice if the vegetables have turned white. Because there's white stuff on it, as he says.
It's a really quite good little problem solving.
I am very, very impressed with his sense of timing. Because he's got it all worked out. He's like, okay, so sunset's at this time. And Chester will be probably coming in around this time. And they'll be coming in to eat. And she's got her oven timer set for this much time, so it's a really short window, but I can do this.
And he can. So he drops Bunnicula down in this giant salad, and Bunnicula wakes up and is surrounded by food, but he's a little confused because you would also be a little bit confused if you suddenly woke up in a pile of food.
Well, I think he actually started waking up while Harold was carrying him across the room, so, middle of the room, hanging from your dog friend's mouth would be confusing. And then suddenly you're in a pile of salad. It's like, wait, what? How did I get here? What is going on? It would take a minute.
I would probably take a few minutes to figure out why it was in a giant salad.
I mean, from a rabbit's point of view, that might be like their view of heaven or something.
Possibly.
Except for the white stuff all over it.
Maybe they like that. Chester sees the situation as like, absolutely not, and takes a running leap into the salad, sending it everywhere. And then, of course, the humans come in and see what's going on, and there's lots of screaming and yelling, and then they decide to take everyone to the vet because something weird is going on with Chester. Bunnicula actually looks sick because he's been starving.
And they're only just now noticing this, so I have to say, as much as they seem like awesome pet owners in every other regard, except for the trying to give milk to your rabbit, which, okay, let's not do that. That's not going to work.
And chocolate cupcakes.
And the chocolate cupcakes to the dog. I mean, otherwise they seem like really awesome pet owners, but somehow they're only just now noticing their bunny is listless and sick and starving.
That's not good. But the vet manages to fix Bunnicula right up with a liquid diet, which is what he needs anyway. And honestly, he likes it so much that the Monroes decide to just keep him on the liquid diet, which
solves everything.
Yeah, they don't have any more mysterious vegetable blights.
Yes, and they're convinced to the end it was vegetable blight. They've gone to a new supermarket. I love that.
Chester, meanwhile, gets sent to a kitty psychiatrist who diagnoses him with sibling rivalry.
And anxiety.
Which Harold isn't convinced that's really the problem. I don't know. I think sibling rivalry may be a good bit of Chester's problem. Definitely anxiety. Now, of course, in the 70s, we don't have a great version of psychology and psychiatry, so...
psychotherapy, I think, is what Chester gets.
He also starts reading some book entitled How to Find Yourself Through Screaming a Lot.
Yes, and he goes down to the basement and practices down there getting in touch with his inner kitten. And I would just like to say, I would like to have a copy of How to Find Yourself Through Screaming a Lot, because I feel like that would be a very good option. Just go out into your backyard and just scream, and it might help.
Do you really need a book for that?
I'm sure it must be a very specific way to do it if you're going to have like maximum results, or else they wouldn't have written a book about it.
Since I don't think it exists, maybe we should write one.
How to Find Yourself by Screaming a Lot.
If I've learned anything about self-help books, it's that you don't really have to have credentials.
You don't have to have any clue what you're doing. If you can just make words come out on a book page, people will buy it.
ChatGPT.
There we go. We'll get ChatGPT to write the book. Don't steal our idea.
Or do,
It's our idea. But.
So, everything is fine again. The children return to playing with Harold. Chester is getting in touch with his inner kitten. Bunnicula is just eating a bunch of liquid vegetables. It is time to rate this on my sugar scale that has no units. So S stands for sexiness. It's really not sex.
I'm going to say NA. Does not apply.
There is a moment, though, when Chester and Harold are talking about the situation with vampires and how vampires bite things and people on the neck. And apparently Harold has seen Mrs. Monroe bite Mr. Monroe on the neck.
Yeah, and Chester has to reassure Harold that it's not the same thing.
I'm not sure how Chester knows that.
It's the closest we're going to get, I think, to this. So
that made me laugh. It's not something
that was hilarious.
I think I would ever have noticed as a child.
I have bitten my sister, so just randomly. And my sister's just bitten me randomly because we do that. But the last time we did it was at my brother's baby shower, and then we realized that we were sitting and talking to the new people we had only met 15 minutes earlier, and we just bit each other. Okay, so hopefully they're still friends with us. We'll see.
But did you drain lifeblood?
No, didn't even break skin. Just bit her, and she bit me. So it was fine.
Happens.
My family is special.
So the U is for uniqueness. This is a pretty unique book.
A pretty unique book. I love it. And I especially love that we get like animal psychotherapy in it and like animal welfare. And we get people who like talk to their pets and explain things to them because they assume that their pets are smart and can understand things. And I feel very vindicated in discussing things with my cats, which I do. I tell my cats things and explain it to them.
And Chester likes to read books. The Fall of the House of Usher, specifically.
Yeah, he has a particular liking for, like, horror and stuff. So, good for him.
Yeah. I have a literary cat. She sits on a lot of books. I assume that's how she reads.
I think Piggy was literary when my father-in-law wouldn't stop trying to pet her at Thanksgiving their first year. She decided to jump up on the bookcase and go behind my books. So
It's very safe.
it's a nice, well, until my nephew, who was like 3 or something, comes over and he's like, the books keep falling off the shelves by themselves. And I'm like, wait, what?
I assume
She had
that's the
decided she
poltergeist.
needed more space and just started stretching, and books just started going boop.
Sometimes you just have to make a little
She
space
likes
for
books.
yourself. The G is for gender. This does not pass the Bechdel test. There is, I think, a very 1970s attempt to be progressive in terms of gender, in that Mrs. Monroe has a job, and a very prestigious job. She's a lawyer. She still seems to do all the cooking because that's how that works. But,
She's the only female character, I think. Well, we don't
Yeah.
know. If we assume Bunnicula, I think Bunnicula is identified as male, but
I think so.
Bunnicula is the only one in the book who never talks. So, but
It's-
Bunnicula does like cuddle up with Harold and stuff, and hang out.
Which is very cute.
Mm-hmm.
So, not great gender relations or having women or females of any kind. It's the 70s. It's better than the other rabbit book
I was
we
about
read.
to say so much better than Watership Down,
Yeah.
where the females are commodities.
Yes. The A stands for axiness because Franz Kafka says that books should be an axe for the frozen sea inside us. I wouldn't say this book really changes my world in any way, but it's very lovely and nice and just fun.
Changes my mood, makes me happy. It's so cute and sweet. So I'll go with that.
That works. Finally, readability. It's like 90 pages with pictures. I think I read it in under an hour.
Yeah. And it's, nicely spaced chapters, so it makes a great chapter book for kids. So very readable. And I think it's one of the great things about it is that it can still work for like children today for the most part.
It's a very fun little read, and it goes by very quickly. I'm currently rereading Dracula, and I appreciated this as a break from Dracula. Like, they've got all the garlic, they've got the steak, but without all the actual horror. Because,
Yes.
I mean, yes, vegetables, but the world is probably never going to be sucked dry by Bunnicula.
There's a lot of vegetables and you can just grow more.
Exactly.
I mean, I've got tomatoes still growing in my yard, so
I cannot
and it's
stop
October now,
growing
so-
tomatoes.
you don't even have to plant tomatoes anymore.
I don't. I just have tomatoes. There's so many tomatoes. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned about Bunnicula eating vegetables. He's cute. It's okay. I mean, it's really just a unique way of eating, and it's not totally polite to watch people's weird ways of eating.
There was one thing I really liked about it is when they, yes, I have to put on my fake eyeballs now because I'm going to actually have to find something that I didn't mark in my book, in the book. Oh, and one thing I went back to Chester getting his therapy, which I think is just so progressive for the 70s, like to be getting animal therapy and have a good view of therapy. Is I love Chester coming in. He's like, Harold, do you realize we never really communicated? I mean, really communicated? I'm like, oh goodness, it does read like a 70s self-help book. I do love how he's like, he's still a vampire. He's just modern because now he's getting his food from a blender instead of from the vegetables. So it's all okay. And I'm like, wow, that's a real turnaround for Chester.
It is. Have we really communicated about this book? I mean, really communicated.
I think so because we both expressed that we really, really like fuzzy creatures. And I think that's the most important part about this book.
Excellent. Communication has happened. Dea, thank you so much for joining me and discussing Bunnicula, the cutest vampire novel, with me.
The happy, happy bunny book we needed before.
Yes. Is there anything you would like to tell our readers or exhort them to do?
Be good. Go cuddle more fuzzy creatures right now.
I saw.
And I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. You don't necessarily have to have consent to cuddle your fuzzy creatures all the time because sometimes it's funnier if you don't.
I saw a statistic recently that suggested that 2 out of every 3 cats has been cuddled non-consensually, and now I want to cuddle the other 1 cat.
So do I. It needs to be cuddled too.
I'm going to go home and I'm going to scoop up my kitten and I'm going to hold her upside down like a little baby and I'm going to kiss her between her fuzzy little ears.
I'm going to put mine on my shoulder because he loves that. And then rub my face in his fur because he has very soft fur. And sometimes I can even smell how nice his fur smells. unlike my other tabby who has very stinky fur.
Cuddle your cats, especially if they smell good. Or not your cats, your dogs, your bunnies, whatever else you have.
If it's a very tiny, fragile creature, cuddle it gently.
If you've got a fish, don't pull that out of the water to cuddle it.
Yes. Instead, just stand at the tank and tell it what a happy, nice little fish it is. They like that better.
Thank you so much. Like and subscribe.